So, hi everyone. Raquel here, co-founder of Empired, along with Anna. Empire is a community for mothers and friends of mothers, where we create events and workshops to provide tools to thrive personally and professionally. And now we're bringing the series called Hear Our Voices, where we can share our stories and bring awareness about culture and race. Today we have with us Duce Williams, and Duce is here to share his voice and provide us a special message this week in honor of Father's Day. Duce, we welcome you and hand over the mic to you. Tell us your story, your background. Start with little Duce. What was he doing from the early age?
Yeah, little Duce is a complicated one. Hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Duce, straight like that. And I grew up in South Florida. I'm a Florida native. My family is from the Bahamas, and my mom's side is from Georgia. So that's kind of my mixture, two totally different experiences and lifestyles and thought process. Currently, I went to high school in Florida, played ball in Florida, studied in Wisconsin, studied in Australia, and now I'm back here again in South Florida still because I love the weather. Business owner and father of two. So that's kind of my story, and that's kind of me in a little snippet.
And well, your wife is not here with us, but do you want to tell the story of you and your wife and touch bases, like we were talking earlier in interracial marriage, because she's Colombian, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, Colombian through and through.
Through and through.
So my wife, we've been married for 7 years. Well, I better get that right. 7 years. And her name is Juliana, and her family, she was born and raised in Bogota, and we met here actually in church. We met here in church, and one of the things that united us was a little bit deeper than just the race side of it. The spiritual side was the thing that really brought us together, and we went through a lot together. We went through a lot of things from the time we were dating until we were married, and we made it through. We made it through a lot of those things. Even our story is very interesting because I think the dynamic between her growing up in Colombia and then coming to America, and then me being here, understanding like how her father was introduced to, I would say, Black culture. In the beginning, and understand what type of person I was. I think he had to learn and go into that. But I think on the other side, something that helped her father and her family kind of understand me was that my culture allowed me to introduce myself a certain way, and that our marriage has been built on something very strong because we've kind of gone through all the tough stuff already. We had to really ask who we were and how much love that we have for each other. So our relationship grew through us dating. We actually both studied in Australia together. So that was a whole other dynamic. But yeah, so that's the basis of our marriage story. And it's interesting because most people don't know, but honoring my wife's father was something that I think set our marriage up. Because when we were in Australia together in another country, I went to her father before and tried to introduce myself to him and say, hey, look, I'm a good guy. I'm from a good family. I have a lot of things in front of me. And he requested I didn't date his daughter. And for almost 2 years, I didn't let my wife know that her dad had told me that. And I just honored his request without telling her that. And so you got to imagine, when we were in Australia, my current wife didn't understand why we couldn't date. And I didn't want to tell her oh, because your dad said so. I just wanted to honor him and go through this process. And now that kind of built our relationship to something so much stronger. That's kind of our story, that that helps everybody kind of understand. So yeah, that's us.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did, like, it's pretty interesting because it takes a lot for someone to do that. You know, because when you love someone, love is just so strong and so pure, and especially knowing that you come from a good place, a good heart. I don't know, like, how was that dynamic for 2 years, you honoring that? And most people would have said, no, I'm gonna date her regardless, like, that took a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was more about, okay, so understanding the father, understanding what a father is one of the dynamics of my life. So understand I had with my father, understand how a father would care for his daughter. So because I had his concerns might be, what his worries might be, because this is his daughter. So in my home, we learned to respect someone for who they are first. In my family, it's a big part of our. You learn to respect people. Now that's not, don't cower down to people. Don't take no crap from people. But definitely, if you're trying to join or be a part of something, the first thing you got to enter into is respect. So for me, understanding the dynamic of of race in America, understanding that what the media portrays, someone who maybe just came to this country might have a different perception of what a person like me is like. It's very hard for someone to really know until they actually meet someone or get inside a family dynamic and see that, oh, what they show on the news is not really the whole story. It's kind of just stereotypes that precede people without them even knowing. It's kind of what, and now that I'm married, I'm starting to learn that what is perceived in other countries about Black people is a certain stereotype because it fits media. It fits a story, and it's easy for people to grasp. It's not, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to engage with it. So that during that whole time, I had to understand all those dynamics, and it's just been a part of my life for a long time. So it's a little bit easier. Not easy in the sense like it isn't tormenting, but it's easier that I understand. Like I can grasp to understand that someone may not really know that I'm a really good person. They have to really get to know me. So yeah, was it difficult? Yeah, it was difficult for me as a man to put my pride away and understand this man as a father and say he's doing what he thinks is best for his daughter. But love prevailed through that. So that's kind of what helped me even going into a marriage to know what I really care about and what I really value and what I really don't value. So yeah, it was hard, but now definitely looking back on it, it was a major building block in our whole relationship. So, and I don't have the same, details of the story like my wife does, I'm saying that, the details of what happened on this day, and I'm kind of giving the overall picture, but yeah, there's a lot of stories in that story, but basically that's what built a big part of our relationship.
Was it difficult for your family to accept her culture?
No.
No.
Not at all. That's actually interesting because in my household growing up, my dad was born in the Bahamas, raised in the Bahamas, and a lot of my family is still in the Bahamas. And you got to understand, island culture is not per se different, but it's the ideologies are different inside of Black culture, Black America. In the islands, people travel a lot. People see the world, and then you also interact with a lot of people from other places because a lot of people come. The Bahamas is a very not just transient place, but people come from other countries and they stay there for a little bit of time. You have wealthy people, you have poor people, you have people from Asia, you have people from Europe, you have people from America that all come and gather in this small island. So the Bahamian culture is very happy and open to trying to understand other cultures, even language. You know, you're very much encouraged to learn other language in our household. You know, when I was in middle school and high school, I took Japanese just because in our house language was just something that you just learn, and you learn how to interact with people. The ocean, boat culture, a lot of things that you interact with that, not saying that it doesn't happen in every Black American household, it's just different. It's just a different approach towards things. You know, so, you know, embracing my wife's culture, I think it was a lot easier for my family, just because it's kind of like that. We party, have fun. Yeah, what you cooking? We start with food. What you cooking? You know, what you're putting on the table, and that's where everything kind of starts. you know, what do you eat? Some basic things. What's your music? Some things that every human does. How do you sleep? You know, all those things are some very basic common denominators that you can open yourself up to another culture and try to understand.
It's easy to say that it all comes down to love. If we feel love, we're in acceptance of everything else. So we really come to understand that it doesn't matter where we come from. It doesn't matter what race, what culture. We can all unite.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent for everyone not sometimes I feel like everyone's trying to blend everything. I think that's the wrong thing. I don't think that taking away from who you are is going to help everything come together. You know, learning to love a human, the first basic, that should be bare bones necessity. You know, understanding that this person across from you is a human. But I think that people should definitely start addressing their differences and not being so offended by it, or being offended because someone is different from you, or taking a fixation on someone that is different. I really want you to address, I'm Black, and it's okay for me to be Black. You are a different texture of brown, and that's okay. I think that sometimes when people say, I don't see color. Well, you're lying to yourself. You know, there's obviously there's differences for a reason. I just think that we have to learn how to embrace those differences without having an open mind to someone that does something differently. And then on the flip side, also being okay if someone doesn't like it or does like it. You know, we're all grown, or we're supposed to be grown adults.
Right.
So, but, you know, I think one way that people can come together better is when they actually do just be a little bit more honest. And, you know, don't tell me you don't see me, or you don't see my color, or you don't see, you know, it doesn't bother me. Well, it's not supposed to bother you, but it's a very blatant physical difference in between people. And the only way that people can get over some things is to start to talk about it and understand it, because it will help both sides of anyone just understand how you're perceived. That's something that we learn about in our culture. You know, you'll find that women, they tend to care about their aesthetic a lot. They care about how they look, how they present themselves, and that's something that's taught even to the boys. When you're growing up, you know, you're talking about little Duce. You know, all my pictures from when I was little, you know, my haircut was top notch. You know, my mom used to put me in these suits with a little tie, and you know, I look back and I'm like, man, that stuff was, you know, a lot of stuff. You know, so, you know, it's good for, and what I came to understand even when I was little is that, yeah, clothes don't make you, what you wear doesn't make you, but it's good to approach everybody in a way so that, not so that they can accept you, but so that you can open a conversation, and then you'll learn about how a person is before the second sentence. So, yeah.
That's true.
Yep. We actually talked about that on the last conversation, because Anna and I were talking that it's not about I don't see your color. It's about I see your color and I accept you anyway.
Yeah.
It's like even if you're not of color, like immigrant, that's something that should be talked about too, because the people that immigrated came into this country to feel as if we had to be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
When we're in a country that it's foreign to us, but we're putting our heart and effort to grow in it, which makes a country grow too. So like you said, yeah, it's very important to talk about these things.
Yeah. Yeah, like my dad, I remember when my dad got his citizenship. It still never occurred to me what he had to go through, actually, until I became an adult. When my dad first came to Florida, he got a job. He started working. I think he said he used to work in, is it Morrison's? He was a relish maker or something. Like he was working in the restaurant industry when he first got here. But I'm pretty sure by the time I was born, he was already a EMT, going on to becoming a fireman. And that's all I knew growing up. I knew that my dad was a firefighter paramedic. That's some of my earliest memories. And all this time, I did not know that my dad was considered an alien. He had his green card, or I forgot what it was called.
Alien card.
The alien.
It's called the alien green. The alien. I forgot what it's called.
The green card.
So it had the word alien in it.
Where they handing those out at? Let me go get my alien card. What you do with it? Can you charge something? What? Do with the card?
We're foreign, so we're aliens.
Yes, I know. It's crazy to think about it now.
Yeah.
When you're young, you're like, okay.
In our house, it wasn't I don't think it was as prevalent in other cultures. Like it wasn't like such a big deal. I don't know if because immigration when I was young wasn't as aggressive or as publicized as it is right now. So, but in our house, when you see the people that my dad worked with, the image of him in a newspaper or he looks all American. Everything's all American, firefighter, big red truck, the flag on everything, and he's going to people's homes saving their lives, and he's not considered a citizen. He's not considered a citizen, but he's literally saving citizens' lives. So that was definitely something that understanding that process was something that also helped me when my wife got her citizenship. I understood what they had to go through to get to that point to become a citizen. And I'm always challenging people that they should respect that so much more and understand what people have to go through because they want to do better for their family. Same common denominator in every culture. They want to do better for their family. They don't want to take away from you or take away from your culture, but they're trying to build something for their family too. And that's that same human dynamic that we can meet on and try to understand. People can communicate a lot better, and not have the same that's been shown by media or by some type of other entity to really understand. When you meet someone and try to relate to it, and actually even just going through that same thing helps me understand other people's plight. So when I hear about, I have to watch and hear about kids that come into the country and they get locked or basically being held in almost like detention like centers, seeing kids in cages, it fires me. It kind of makes me get, I understand that I want to fight that fight with them because I understand what they're trying to do. They're not trying to hurt anybody, they're not trying to do anything wrong. And I know that the process just to become quote unquote legal, it's a whole process that it's damn near impossible.
Yes.
But but I know it takes time and it takes money and it takes resources, and sometimes I think people aren't honest about that part either. You know, I think if it was easier, not easier, but just a better streamlined way to help people become legal. I hate saying become legal, but become legal according to the terms in the country to make things so much better. And also other people just to understand what it actually is. Most Americans, they don't know what the immigration process is even like. So, yeah.
Very intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom, when we first got here, she obviously became a single mom and had to work 2 jobs. And it took us, I can't remember the exact amount of time, but I want to say like 5 years before we were able to get our resident card, which meant that after you get your resident card, she had to pay for 4 individuals. So my grandmother, who came with her, herself, and her 2 children, including myself. And each residency card is $500 each. Well, at that time, it's probably a lot more now. And so it took her that long, or maybe more. I was a child, so I can't really recall. And I actually haven't asked her how long exactly it was, but it was a while. And I remember, because Raquel mentioned it, and I kind of had forgotten about that experience where, we would go out and we would be scared that for some reason we would be stopped and we didn't have any card with us to prove that, we're anything, they could just take us. She obviously had to work jobs that allowed her to work without anything, without papers, she was here and she had to feed us. So it took us 5 years, and then another 10 years. You could apply for citizenship. You had to wait 10 years after that. So I remember I became a citizen. I paid for it myself, which was, I think, $800 at that time. I think it's more. I was paying for college at that time with my own money as well. So I think once I hit the mark, I think I had to wait a little longer because I didn't have the money at the time. So I was saving up for it. And it's a long process. And once I became a citizen, it just felt so much, you felt the freedom, and I was just so proud to be a citizen. And I think that's what people don't see, that a lot of people, when they become citizens, they're so proud to be citizens of the United States of America. And it's those stories that you don't really hear, that you said they need to be heard, because it's important. And if it just feels good, I'm sure Raquel could attest to this, that when you become a citizen, you just feel like, okay, I don't have to worry about anything anymore,
Yeah. Yeah. That is the, it's always an interesting thing, because like I said, I've always seen both sides of this story, because my dad was came here and he got a citizenship, but my mom was a citizen, and understanding the history of her side of the family from Georgia, Blakely, Georgia, still even learning about the history of my family, because we have to find those records, and it's something difficult to even find because of things that were on a plantation, or having to go through specific records to find those things out. There was also like two sides of the story, because I've also seen people who were citizens of the United States be mistreated. And those stories it's so interesting, everything that's going on. I feel like it kind of all bubbled out at one time, like the pot finally just started boiling over. But these things have been going on for so long. For me, it wasn't anything, everyone was so shocked. They didn't know. It was like, wow, I didn't know this. I didn't understand. when all of these things kind of bubbled over, I think it was to the point already where people who have been experiencing this, you know, they're like, this has been going on for a long time, you know? And then people starting to, for the first time, you know, I'm seeing people for the first time look at history and go back and have to rebuild their timeline because of how they were educated. It's sometimes it's tempting for me to just say, like, you know, I want to say, hey, you guys are idiots. You know, I want to say that, but that's not the right way to approach it. And I had to, that's my culture. But sometimes I have to remember that, you know, people didn't have the same story that I had. They didn't have the same education that I had. They didn't have the same father figure that I had, man figure that I had. Seeing those other stories consistently over the years also built something in me too, you know, to help me understand that, like, I'm free here, but I have to learn the system. You know, that's kind of my new tagline for the next, I think for the next 20 years. If you don't understand the system and how it works, it will only confuse you. And that's what I think is something that I'm trying to help, especially young Black men understand. Any man that wants to understand, but you know, being I don't even like African American. I'm using that term because that's what everyone understands. But being a Black man, you have to learn how this country works. You have to learn how the system works, so that you can thrive in it and you can move forward in it. Because there's a lot of great things inside this country, but people have to be honest and say that there's a lot of horrific things in this country that has to be fixed. So, you know, I know that people were celebrating when they became citizens, and I don't know how everyone feel. I don't know how people who immigrated to the country feel now. I don't want to speak for them, but I don't know, you know, that first high of understanding that you became a citizen, you have these freedom, you have rights, you can move freely. Do you think that there any changes, or that just stays that way? I don't know how you feel. Did it stay free that way, or did you say, oh yeah, this is a free country, but there's this little thing over here? Do those things come up, or how do you?
I think yes and no. I think that most people that come from other countries, especially maybe Latin America, because, you know, that's what I also know, and Raquel, I'm sure, they're just so wrapped up and worried about the dangers in their country that all they're thinking about is their safety, really, you know, and they're just running away from, you know, mass killings of drug lords and who knows what else, dictator regimes and stuff like that. So they're just looking at it from that perspective. And so for them, and the Latin culture or Latin countries, Latin American countries, also have that deep-rooted colonized thought that becoming American is the ultimate thing. You know, it's just, it's like there's so much Americanization happening in our countries. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my mom today about how when we eat cereal, we would call it cornflake because that was the brand that was most popular there, and it was an American brand. And so that's what we called cereal, cornflake. You know, that's like every cereal was cornflake, whatever was cornflake. And when I got here, I used to say cornflake in school, and they're like, cereal? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, you want cornflake cereal? Like, whatever cornflake you have. Wow. So it's like those things. I know it's like I'm from the point, but
no, that's good. Well, from my understanding, that shows me how imprinted something is and how it can stay, and you won't even realize it. It brings up another question. I'm sorry, I know I'm asking you this question, but that's how.
It's okay. That's the point of this.
Like, in the Hispanic community, Black community. I'm trying to make ask a big question, but the history of how a person might think, is that something that's taught or spoke about, or like does everyone start to learn, like, like the difference between Haiti and the Dominican Republic? Like, does everyone know why those things were split that way? Is that history taught? I feel like history is something that a lot of cultures just don't know how they got to the place where they are, and those things are just kind of accepted, like,
I don't think so. I can't say because I didn't really have an education, a high school education there, and I think that that's when more historical things are taught. But I would feel free to say probably not. I learned of Haiti and Dominican Republic in college.
Wow.
So not through high school, not that I remember. And I love history, so I'm also a history nerd. I have a bad memory, so I can't remember much things. That's like the worst combination, but I love history too. So I studied a lot of history. My major is anthropology and sociology. So, you dwell a lot of culture. You learn a lot about cultures and societies and stuff like that. So that's when I learned it. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I remember in high school learning about Martin Luther King, like the major figures in the Black movement, like Rosa Parks. But you wouldn't really hear about, like I was telling, in the last conversation, like astronauts or physicians who created a vaccine or who solved a problem, or, any other kind of role model out there, or our accomplishments made by the Black American is very limited.
Yeah. It's I think it's more than limited. I almost think it's almost scratched out. I don't want to say I got lucky. I want to say that I think that some well-intentioned people in the time, we used to go to this church in the city of Hollandale when I was growing up, and I would spend a lot of time there because my dad was like, deacon, and I would play instruments, and so I would be there sometimes. Inside of the back of the church, they had this, they call it African American History Library. It was literally a room with books in it, all right? But they named it a library, and not that people wouldn't be interested in it. It was just something that the older generation put in there, and you got to realize, like, in our house, you have to read. You have to read when you're young. You have to read books. You got to be interested. So when I was young, my dad was giving me, biology books to read. Hey, read this, start learning this, and so read the dictionary. People know, and learn these words. I want you to be eloquent when you're speaking to people. Right. So that side of it too. But inside of this library, I think I got lucky because it was a book full of abstract Black historical figures that I didn't learn about in school. Everyone taught me about Martin Luther King. But now that I'm older, I understand they taught me about one side of Martin Luther King. But these books were explaining, like, the economic history of the Black culture. I remember I forgot his name, but the modern day history of those who helped create things that's very like it's such like email, something that we use every single day. The influence that a Black person had on that, food processing, food growing, the historical basis of how we clean our body and take care of our hair, birth, so many things that you never learn about in the school. And I don't want to blame the school system because I don't know how intentional it is to put it in there or not put it in there. But for my house and my family, it was kind of taught to me to learn the whole story. Always learn the whole story. There's always different sides of everything. So that helped give me a different type of confidence and who I was as a person, and in creativity, how I was thinking. So I'm always encouraging anybody, no matter where you're from, make sure you know your history, because the trickery will get you to think something that's not totally true, almost to the point where it can build hate in people because they don't understand that they're connected in certain ways. And that, if I wanted to trick somebody, if I wanted to really get someone to fight against each other, I would just pick something that I know they really don't understand and tell them you're better than this person because of this, not knowing that that might be your brother or sister.
And I feel like that's what happens with the media, politics. They twist things around so that we can basically be at each other's what's the word, like feel they separate. They like to segregate us and with messages.
If you really sit back and think about it, have you ever noticed that everything is always, the most popular things in America is always one versus one or one versus another? You got to be, and it's funny, you have to be a Democrat or Republican. No one's ever going to talk about the Green Party. No one's ever going to talk about any other. If you're on this side and you have to believe these things 150%, you can't be a libertarian. What is that? Everything is kind of set up that way for you to choose a side and stick to a narrative. And we're almost all trained like media talking heads now. I feel that everyone is just shooting off points that they don't really understand. Everybody's a statistician now. They know stats. Everyone is, solving complicated issues that they never really looked into because it's easy to grasp the information and have a talking point, have a fighting point. But I'm always challenging people to ask more questions. It's the best way to solve everything. Ask questions. So, yeah, I think that now what we're seeing in America is a big result of people not asking questions, first understanding their history, to understand that, if people knew what Black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people did together in this country to get certain things, people will realize that, how many things that we've actually done together and have fought for each other. But if you go with the last 5 years of news and that's the only information you take, you'll end up fighting with somebody that you're actually an ally with, 30 years ago. So I think history is a huge part of understanding who you are as a person. For me, as a man, as a father, as a husband, when you see those examples, you know how to apply different things to different scenarios. So yeah, that's history has been a big part of helping me get over a lot of things, understanding where words come from, what they mean. It's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And in light of Father's Day being this weekend, what is having that male figure in your life that has taught you so much, and now you're gonna pay it forward by being that to your kids? What message do you have to the fathers out there that can plant that seed for their own kids too?
This is a huge one.
Go for it.
This is a huge one. Man, I want to make sure I want to do my best to explain this to any man and woman, just to understand the value of the father in the home. Now, some people are Christians, some people are not. I'm just going to use this as an explanation. I feel that the father figure is almost the representation of protection, healing, growth, sanctity, serenity, and those representations, when it's taken away from a child, I think that it causes almost an internal destruction until that thing is resolved. I think that not having a father is something that affects people all the way through their adulthood. And I think it's different varying levels. It's not like, just because you don't have a father, you can't achieve or you can't do or you can't be. But I know that no matter what, no one could tell me that there's not just always a small lingering thing in yourself, that you almost have to get to the point where I've learned that until you actually can forgive your parents, it's harder to break through things. And I think that the father is a representation of something that for every child is the essence of the beginning of forgiveness. Learning to forgive yourself, learning to understand your own identity. So the father figure, I want to say this very cautiously, but no matter how high quality or low quality that father figure is, it's still important for a child to be able to understand who that person is so they can move past it. And for any fathers out there, the beginning of your child's like growth, production, healing life, you're such an important role in developing that. I'll give some examples. One of the things that affects the Black community a lot, people don't know. I think Lyndon B. Johnson was one of some of the things that happened during his time, and some of the things that were fought for in civil rights may have been more destructive than they have actually helped. A lot of things that people have fought for as far as benefits or things to help a certain community, I think they might have had good intention. Studying history, come to find out they didn't have the best intention, but what they did was take the father out of the home. That was I think that was a major turning point for the Black community in America. Anytime when that started, I think that was one of the experiments in this country that tore apart a community. If you look at the average single family home in the Black community that doesn't have a father, the children will be raised in a scenario where it's hard for one person to effectively take care of a family. That family unit is so broken that you leave. How are you going to leave it to one person? That's a very difficult thing to overcome. That's a very difficult thing to get past, especially when you don't have a supportive community behind you. Leaving kids to basically raise themselves is one of the worst paths that they can take, because they have no idea of what direction to take, and anything can influence them. You basically leave them vulnerable to any wolf inside of the world. There's no protection, there's no guidance, and if you don't have a community kind of set up to point you in the right direction, you can go off on any path. So for me, fatherhood is one of the things that I understand now is what dramatically changed my life, the direction of my life. It affects how I move and think and how I raise my own children. So, yeah, to any father, just understand how important fatherhood is. I value fatherhood more than education. I value fatherhood more than religion. I'm gonna say that. I know people are gonna get a little, but I think that fatherhood is something that you almost have. If it's not in your life, you almost have to heal from it, because it's always there. And if it was absent, there's always something small there. And I think it was made that way by the Creator. Sometimes fathers are a representation of the Creator, and if that is not there, people won't agree with it. But if that's not there, there's always going to be something. People can try to deny it, that is going to be sitting inside of you that needs to be resolved, that needs to be healed. And until it gets healed, sometimes it's hard to get through things. The rise in anxiousness, the rise in depression, the rise in a lot of, I would say, mental instabilities that's been happening in the country. I think people are trying to mask them with things, because my story is kind of, when it comes to mental illness, you got to understand, when my brother was born, he had a bleed on the right side of his brain, and it affected the left side of his body. So he is handicapped, and he has a physical, mental, a physical part of his brain damage from birth. So when people talk about mental illness, I know that there's different varying levels of it, but I think that sometimes people are struggling with just dealing with themselves before anything. So they reach the psychologist, they reach, they reach the drugs, they reach the things to mask it. Pastors, they reach the pastors to fulfill this thing. And I think a part of that healing is having, some of those people are just missing their father. I think that's, if you want to look at the Black community, I think that was one of the biggest atrocities that could have happened, because you take the leader out of the home. You take the person that is a representation of certain things out of the home. And this has been practiced before, if you understand history. The Willie Lynch letters, if you understand, it's a strategic pattern to pull the father figure away from the mother and children, however you want to represent that. And that's not just done for no reason, it's not done to help everybody. It's done because they know that what the father represents, just because of, I think, how men and women differ, you take away a certain part of the development of a child, seeing a certain side of it. For example, me and my wife is extremely gracious with the kids. My wife is extremely loving with the kids. She's extremely patient with the kids. And I am the flip, I am the enforcer. I am the one that says no. But my kids understand that balance. And it becomes even more special when I learn to empathize with my daughter's emotional problem that she can't have her hair tied. While daddy understands, baby, oh yeah, you gotta have the black hair. I know. So it's you got to understand that that's a healing process for especially for a young girl to see her dad. No, we're not going to do this, and I'm going to be strong here, but I'm going to empathize with what's going on with you right now, and try to understand that's the representation of a man to my daughter. And if she has not seen that, how is she going to react to her husband, or how is she going to know what, or even have a baseline of what she wants a man to look like? So that, I think that in the Black community, the initial pulling the men out of the community is a break that I think hasn't been healed yet. It just hasn't been healed in this. And it's hard for me to, when I was younger, I didn't understand that, because in island culture, your mom and dad is there. If you're Bahamian, Haitian, Jamaican, your mom and dad are in the house. And you see what it means to have discipline, and you see what it means to have love. And that balance is so important. I think that every community that has the mother and the father in the home, it makes a dramatic difference. When I look at the Hispanic community, I see homes where it's full of kids, sometimes that's not even their own parents. But when you go in that home, you have the father figure that's working, and then you have the mom figure who's also saying, I'm going to cook you some food. I'm going to make sure you're fed. I'm going to make sure I take care of the family. And sometimes I think culture has been looking down on that sometimes, and say that, well, they're going to say women power. And I know that's something that has to be discussed, but understand that there's power in that also. There's so much power in that also. And the power of being a mother is no more greater than the power of being a father. I think those two things have to come together. And when one is taken away, it's equally traumatic. So I'm sorry to get to jump into it that deep, but fatherhood is something that I literally teach anyone that's younger than me, especially males that come and they want to learn. Hey, I want to learn about business. I want to learn about finances. That's the first thing I teach them is you have to learn to be a man before you can handle any of this other stuff. And I ask them, hey, have you ever, what's your situation with your dad? I have not met one person to this day who has not had their father and asked, hey, tell me about your father. Has that affected you in any way? Have you forgiven your father if he did anything wrong to you? Have you healed from that? I've never had one conversation where it hasn't been such a strong sense. These are grown people, you know. Where it's like, man, yeah, I actually need to heal from that to get past this thing. I've always been held back by this, and I need to heal to get. So to me, fatherhood is like a cornerstone. It's not the only thing, but it's a cornerstone to healing a lot of issues. Sorry for going that long, right?
No. It's completely true. I mean, my parents were, my mom wanted a divorce before she even found out she was pregnant with me. So my history is of, my dad was around, but he was just, I never had, it was a broken home. So yeah, I had to, even though he was around, I still came to realize later as a grown up that there was some shadow work that I had to work through and actually forgive them. Because as a child, I thought, how can you be so irresponsible to have a baby if you didn't want to be together to begin with? But it was meant to be in my life that way for whatever reason. Thankfully, he was still around, just not at home. And even that way, still for me felt like there was something missing. So it's, of course, it makes a difference. And I'm thankful for my mom, because moms can still do whatever they can, and doesn't mean that you can't do it alone. And there's that have to take the task by themselves. But as a child that grew up with divorced parents, I can test that, and I'm sure Anna can too, that it does make a difference.
Wow.
Yes, I agree too. I mean, I don't think it ever goes away. I don't think for any child of divorced parents, or children who maybe never met their parent, one of their parents, it never goes away. Even if you heal from it, it just never goes away. There's certain times in your life where you see certain things and you wonder what it would be like to have had that parent in your life, or things that you missed out on because you didn't have. And although I had a stepfather, it's also never going to be the same, from being your father, from your stepfather. And even if your stepfather, the stepfather is a great person, loves you, provides for you, it's just not going to be 100% that same, and you'll always have that feeling. There's always something lingering there, no matter how healed you are.
Yes. This is where I try to explain, this is where understanding how powerful the love of the Father is. And I almost encourage anybody to try to forgive their parents. Your parents screwed you up. People don't want to be honest. Your parents did the best that they could with what they understood. And I think as adults, we got to understand that. Don't judge them for it. Don't hate them for it. They did the best that they could as adults, because they had broken things inside of them too. Sometimes when you're younger, you see you see your parents as, they can't do no wrong. These are my parents, and they should know the answer. They should know how to do this. They should definitely know what to do. But they were just people too. And I think that's the beginning of healing, right? They're just people. And I think that as adults, we actually have to go back, face our parents. When I say face them, I mean talk to them face to face and forgive them, and be honest. Now, if you go to your mom and say, "Mom, I forgive you for, kind of messing you up," she's going to get mad. But I think that's a part of healing. That's a part of making sure that you actually get that out of your system. And everybody's mom going to respond different. Somebody might get slapped, and some might,
our culture usually uses the sandals, la chancleta.
But I think that is a part of it. It's a big part of not just like, I did it myself. Like actually going to them physically, even if they passed away, trying to enter into a place where you're talking, saying it out physically, is a beginning of healing. And then learning to love the Father. Those the Christian term, returning back to the Father, is the beginning of where you start to blast and grow and bloom into things. That's what happened to me. Once I learned to forgive my mom, forgive my dad, and learn to love my father, I started to look at him as a man and understand that he had failures. He had things that probably weren't perfect, but I learned to love him as a father, which helped me love myself. And that's when things radically even changed in my own life, you know. Yeah.
I think
fatherhood is I think is an understated or underthought, like underprocessed part of us as humans, and I think it's missing right now. I think it's missing in a lot of ways. Yeah,
I agree. I think
powerful message. I agree too. I mean, we can keep on and on. I know that.
Yeah, this one is a later one too.
Sorry, yeah,
oh no, because
you hit a nerve with both of us.
I completely get what you're saying. You when you come to the realization that your parents did the best they could with what they knew, the same way that as a mom today, I'm doing the best I can with what I know.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe my kid will be doing this chat a few years from now and had to heal something, but I am doing the best that I can with what I know. And of course I educate myself to be better, but that's all I can do.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. That's why go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that when you were talking about that, I remember reading a book by Leo Buscaglia, who's Italian, or was Italian, and he wrote many books, and I fell in love with his writing because it was just beautiful. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he wrote in one of the books that I read, it was about just exactly what you said. You know, you have to remember that your parents are humans and that they will do mistakes like any of us, and they also carry their own baggage of whatever experiences they went through. And so you actually, after reading that, I saw so many things differently, and it changed my course a lot more than before. I decided to forgive my dad when I was in high school, because it was just, I was in this turmoil inside of me. And I realized that the only way that I could either move on was either to forgive him or not, but decide one side and not be in this middle of loving him, then being mad at him, loving him and being mad at him for, you know. And so I decided to forgive him because I knew what kind of person he was inside, and whatever he did, however wrong it was, you know, he's a human being. So, and that was that changed. And then when I read that book, then it also opened up a lot more stuff that I realized, you know, it was interesting. And you reminded me of that, because it was just exactly what you said.
Yeah, I can dig deep into a lot of stuff with just healing, fatherhood, parenthood. You know, it's a slow process, and that's why I think it's the hardest part for people to grasp, because it's not something that you can do instantly, which we've kind of been groomed to do with everything that's around us. I need it right now, you know. So, yeah, that if I can say anything to a father and anything to any parents, like, I know Father's Day's coming up, but first, don't let anyone tell you how to raise your kids. That's yeah, like I know, we actually create content for companies that do a lot of stuff with parenting and products, and I am all for it. I'm all for giving people information and tools to help with their life and their scenario. But honestly, I never want, no one should ever feel bad about how they parent their kids or try to meet some expectation of how to parent your kids. I have a 10% theory. You should take 10% of something that you see, and if you can apply it to your life, apply it. You know, be open to learning new strategies, new things. But I think that almost with social media, with anything, we kind of glorify what we see someone doing as a parent, and we think we have to do it exactly like them. But I think more and more, I'm hoping that people start to stand, like, to build their own basis of stuff, especially for parents, and raise your kids the way you need to raise them. You know, don't let little mom in the comment section say you shouldn't be doing that because they're gonna have a bump, or like, you know. To me, that stuff, it drives me insane. You know, their parent, that's their child. You know, I'm not condoning anything horrific, but parents have the power to raise their kids. Fathers, you have the power to raise your kids. Society's going to try to mess you up when it tells you about what you need to do as a father. You know, even for me personally, I don't fit the dad narrative. I don't know how people see me as a dad, but I don't have the good dad narrative in me. I'm just a good father, you know. I set high expectations for my kids. I am tough on my kids. I do discipline my kids in a way to make sure that when they go into the world, they understand how to function. I believe that's my role, and that's the way I raise my kids. But I would never tell another man, you need to raise your kids like this. I will encourage him. This could be a blessing for your kids. That might be kind of harmful for your kids, but I wish that more parents would just stop trying to tell other parents what to do and let everybody raise their own damn kids. You know, just that's a big piff with me sometimes. So I don't want to come from a place saying this is what you got to do. I like coming from a place of saying, hey, this might be a tool that you can use in your toolbox. You might not need it right now, but you can use it later. So take from me, learn from my experiences and my tragedies, so you don't have to go through it, and you know, build your family the way you want to build your family. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is the
Amen.
message that we should print out on shirts and give it out on Grandparents' Day.
Oh, yeah. Don't even go to that. Grandparents, that's a whole other thing, you know. Grandparents.
Let's make t-shirts.
Look, in my house, you got to understand, my dad, when I was growing up, he was basically militant, you know, like bed needs to be made, four corner, you know, like that, like, you know. And as I got older, he kind of lightened up a little bit because he saw I was doing the responsible thing, you know. But when I was younger, you know, I knew that my dad was, you know, he's gonna bring the discipline, right? As soon as my daughter was born, not even when I first got married, and like he had a daughter for the first time in the house. It was like a totally different world, you know? Oh, let me take you to the store. My dad never took me to the store like that, you know? Let me buy, what do they need? You know, and then when our daughter was born, when Mia was born, oh my gosh, you know, I want to come and see Mia and I want to hang out with her. And not that he was ever negative towards anything. It was just seeing a different side of him come out as a grandparent. And as far as spoiling them, you know, I didn't know what's. That's a whole
Also, there's a thing about you know, that's why we're the same but also different. Feminine power and the masculine power, and it's incredible what the feminine power does when there is maybe not as much. There's little lack of, because the same thing with when Olivia came into the picture with two of the grandparents. I have three sets of grandfathers, and it was the same, you know. It was like they become like butter around the girls, you know. It's like it's such a different dynamic.
Yes. So Duce, we have loved this conversation. We should definitely do it again.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I don't know if you want to close out the chat with something.
Yes. Well, like Raquel said, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a conversation with us and sharing your point of view, your experiences from a Black male perspective and also a father. We wanted to bring you on especially because of Father's Day, but just in general because we want to bring in different voices. And we appreciate it, and we absolutely had a great time getting to know more about you and your family. And for whoever's watching, thank you again for joining and hearing our conversation. Please leave us your comments, your thoughts, and chime in. We want to know what you thought and what your experiences are. And hopefully we have you again sometime.
Oh, yeah, that'll be great. I'll be back. We didn't get too much, but now we have a good platform to start.
Yeah,
a good place to start from. So.
I agree. Hopefully next time in person.
Yeah, we should do it.
Oh my God, please.
Yes. And
we can just do it in person and put tape in between the stool. I don't care. Just do something in person already.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But anyways.
But yes, thank you, Duce.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me.